Welcome back, everybody. I am the Fantasy Football Strategist, your news hub for breaking NFL news and the redraft and dynasty implications behind said news. In today's video, Dave Canales of the Carolina Panthers says, "It all starts with the run game." What does this mean for Jonathon Brooks? Let's assess his redraft and dynasty value. So, Panthers coach Dave Canales recently said that he's going to stress the run game in order to be able to open things up for the passing game. Now, we all know last year how disastrous it was for the Panthers. First overall pick Bryce Young had no one really to throw to. Adam Thielen was by far his best receiver. DJ Chark was his second best receiver. Yikes. No run game. Chuba Hubbard, he's not cutting it. So, they did an overhaul. They fired their coach. They bring in offensive mastermind Dave Canales in town. They overhaul their run game. They overhaul their offensive line, and they bring in Jonathon Brooks in the second round. This doesn't just sound like a bunch of coach speak that means nothing here. They really made key decisions to be able to bring in talent to actually utilize their run game this year. And the fact that he's name-dropping Jonathon Brooks really matters, besides the fact that they used second-round draft capital on him, which, considering he had a torn ACL, really speaks volumes about how talented he really is. So, what did they do this offseason to aid their running game? Well, they signed Robert Hunt to a 5-year, $100 million contract with $63 million guaranteed. Then they also signed Damian Lewis to a 4-year, $53 million contract as well. So, the interior offensive line was their key focus. They want to be able to move people up front and be able to present to the running backs with a lot more open holes than they had this past year. Carolina's run game wasn't really that effective. I think their ineffectiveness was really highlighted by the fact that teams were not scared of them throwing deep. Jonathan Mingo isn't scaring anybody. They had him as an X-wide receiver when he's really a big slot. They had DJ Chark running streaks down the field, and Bryce Young had no time to even get him the ball. And then, again, his deep ball wasn't fantastic either, so there was nothing to keep safeties back. Then slot wide receiver Adam Thielen was really the only credible receiving threat this past year, so absolute train wreck disaster. Hence why they brought in Dave Canales to help get rid of all these problems that they had this past year. So, speaking about Dave Canales, let's look at what his running back did this past year. Well, as we all know, he was the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and despite their running game really not working, which was not their offensive line's fault, it was a Rachaad White problem. If you look at the chart below, Rachaad White was third in carries this past year, averaging a measly 3.6 yards per carry. He's more of a receiving back, and he is a very good receiving back, but this isn't about Rachaad White. The reason I'm bringing this up is that if you see, even though it was not working, and Rachaad White is not a fantastic runner of the football, he was committed to establishing the run game. I mean, they had Mike Evans out there, Chris Godwin, even Cade Otton is a fine tight end. So they definitely had credible weapons out there, yet he was really trying to establish the run. Another thing to think about is Rachaad White had a monopoly on the carries. No other Tampa Bay running back had more than 50. So, what we can conclude from this is, once Jonathon Brooks returns from his ACL tear and is really able to get going, based on this past year, he's more than likely to be a workhorse running back. Now, another thing to think about is Rachaad White was utilized heavily in the passing game through screens, flats, angle routes. This bodes well for Jonathon Brooks. He's not exactly a maven in terms of his route running, but he's fantastic after the catch. He's also explosive when he gets the ball in his hands as a receiver. So, based on what they did with Rachaad White, Jonathon Brooks is actually really talented. So, things should go very well for him, along with the fact that they upgraded the offensive line, especially at the guard position on both sides. That's looking really good for his workload in the future. Now, earlier in the year, in terms of the redraft thought process, he's probably not going to do quite as much while he gets up to speed and recovers from the injury, but he should be a monster down the stretch. And obviously from a dynasty standpoint, he's not even 21 years old. So he has plenty of time to recover from this injury. And think about it, his price is actually a little bit suppressed because of the injury. Had he not been injured, he would more than likely have been at least an early second round pick or even potentially a late first round pick. So let's look at the depth chart and what the Panthers did this offseason. So once again, they have Bryce Young, 2023 first overall pick. He was put in a terrible situation. They had Adam Thielen as their best receiver. They tried putting Jonathan Mingo in the X spot and running deep routes. Yikes. Should have been a big slot. Like I said, Adam Thielen was their leading receiver. That's not great for anybody. Then they also had DJ Chark. Hurt again. Again. Then Tommy Tremble isn't really scaring anybody at tight end. And Chuba Hubbard was their running back. Just not ideal and isn't scaring anybody. And that contract they gave Miles Sanders, yuck. That guy is absolutely washed. But anyways, as to what they did this offseason to address these problems, well, they kept Bryce Young, obviously, no kidding. But what they did is they drafted Jonathon Brooks in the second round, so they addressed their running back issue. Then they acquired Deontay Johnson, which is fixing the wide receiver 1 issue. He is a silky smooth route runner, a savant. He's fantastic in the short and middle areas of the field, and silky smooth route runner. He's going to get open for them. He's going to be great for hot routes and going to bail Bryce Young when he gets in trouble a lot. Then they kept Adam Thielen. Fine, keep him in the slot. Fantastic. Then they drafted Xavier Legette to be their vertical receiver and their yak guy. So they're going to use him on streaks, crossers, drag routes. So he's more of a DK Metcalf type of athlete, more of a straight line player, not a side-to-side agility type of guy. Then they also drafted Jatavian Sanders to be a receiving tight end. So essentially all new weapons, except they kept their best weapon in Adam Thielen. Great. Now, as we discussed earlier, they addressed the guard position for their offensive line. That's going to open up holes for Jonathon Brooks to run through. And he's also going to be used in the screen game, so he should get a lot of usage. Now, if we look at what the Buccaneers did this past year, they ran the ball a lot more than passed it on first down, but then second, third, and fourth down, they didn't run as much as they passed. Now, I can explain that. Their defense was absolute garbage. They had to throw the ball to stay in the game. But the difference is Baker Mayfield could handle that. They weren't particularly trying to protect Baker Mayfield. He's a vet. What they are going to do, however, is try to actually protect Bryce Young this year. They actually want him to develop. So they're going to run the ball as much as they can. They're not going to be able to run the ball every single down, but no team can. But everything they've done this offseason is to protect Bryce Young. And what's the easiest thing that you can do to protect Bryce Young? Have a good run game. He's going to be utilized heavily to take the load off of Bryce Young this year. Now, looking at his profile, Jonathon Brooks is 6 foot 216 pounds with a 29.3 BMI. That is slightly below the 30.0 threshold to be a bell cow, but his draft capital and the lack of talent around him lead to the fact that he's going to be a bell cow anyways, as well as receiving second-round draft capital, 14th pick in the second round, very high, especially considering his ACL tear. And he's 20.9. He's not even 21 years old. He has many years of being a fantastic running back ahead of him. So, in terms of his redraft and dynasty value, in redraft, he's going to start out slow for you, but if you can get him at a discount, he's going to build up during the season in usage, and he's going to lead many fantasy managers to championships down the stretch. In terms of his dynasty value, you're getting him at a discount more than likely at the back end of the first round or even in the second round of a superflex, and probably in about the middle of the first round in a single quarterback, which for the first running back in a draft class is really, really low and a good value. They also surrounded him with better offensive line play, weapons around him in the receiving game to make it so that they can't just focus on stopping the run every time. He's set up for success here, and Dave Canales, he masterminded Geno Smith's career comeback as well as Baker Mayfield's this past year. He can definitely help Bryce Young, which in turn will help Jonathon Brooks. So another thing to think about is, why didn't he do anything in his first 2 years? Well, he was behind Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, two NFL running backs who were drafted, so I give him a pass. But once he was able to come on the scene as a junior, he had 187 carries for 1139 yards and 11 touchdowns. Fantastic. 6.2 yards per carry, by the way. But that's not all. He had 25 catches for 286 receiving yards. That's actually really impressive when he had 12 yards per catch because his ADOT was in the negatives, meaning that he was getting the ball behind the line of scrimmage and having to create these yards himself. He is a masterful creator of yards. Fantastic footwork, great vision. He knows how to work angles to his advantage. Fantastic in the open field. He also had 4.13 yards after contact, which is among the best in the class. And, to top it all off, he only had one career fumble in college. Great stuff. He's going to be fed in the passing game and in the run game in order to take the load off of Bryce Young. Their entire goal is to take the load off of Bryce Young, and what better way to do that than to draft a talented running back and feed him the ball as much as possible? He's going to be a stud for you and going to lead many fantasy managers to championships with dominant play at the back end of this year. So, you know what I think? I think he's going to start out slow and then ramp up progressively and be dominant and lead many managers to fantasy championships. What do you think? Do you agree, disagree? Let me know in the comments section below. Once again, I'm the Fantasy Football Strategist, your NFL news hub for breaking NFL news and the dynasty and redraft implications behind said news. Please like and subscribe. It would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you and have a great day.